late. A little late,
It's
but
not quite an interview until we have technical difficulties, right?
yeah, it's not officially alive without technical difficulties. So thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us. We're here at Nui HQ headquarters.
Yeah,
Woo!
which is really exciting. I've never actually been here before. We've been friends for years now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to finally see it.
You're one of our first guests. We're excited. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
I feel so special. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
congrats on the new space, new-ish space,
The
right?
new e-space, yeah.
Nui space.
Oh, new e-space. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, it's good to be here.
Yeah, so if y'all don't know, we have Victoria Field here. She's here from the Metabolic Health Summit. And yeah, if you could just share about yourself and like about Metabolic Health Summit.
Yeah, absolutely. So Metabolic Health Summit is a 4-day conference, scientific conference, but that is for everybody. So whether you're a medical professional, a physician or a scientist, or just somebody who's interested in learning about the ketogenic diet, we have something for everybody. So it's over the course of 4 days. We have all the top influencers, top physicians, top experts in the space that are going to be presenting on the diet. And then we've also got some really cool experiences for everybody. Everything from a VIP mixer where you can connect with entrepreneurs and thought leaders in the space, to our speakers, and also a gala dinner that supports 2 really special and important nonprofits that I know you guys know really well, Max Love Project and the Charlie Foundation. And it's really like a conference that brings everybody together, held in Los Angeles, right here. Actually, not in Anaheim, but in Long Beach.
So close.
So close.
Kind of close,
Yeah.
except for in LA, I feel like 2 miles is like 200 miles for some people. But January 31st through February 3rd, metabolichealthsummit.com is where people can find info.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really excited for it. I mean, these conferences are really exciting because you get to meet people from the research and also people that are in the keto space.
Yep.
And that's kind of how we got started and we met, right?
That's how we met. Yeah, I met you guys
At
first. I was like,
Keto
Keto Cookies, what is this?
We were so
Amazing.
nervous for our first conference. I think Chris and I were like, I wonder how people are going to react. And just the response that we got was awesome. And
Yeah.
ever since, every time we go to one of these conferences, we come back like re-energized.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
It was
Yeah.
really cool to see you guys sort of start in the space and where you are now and hear about your stories, and that it was very personal for you. And that's really, I think, how we were able to really connect, because unlike some brands that are out in the world, you don't really get that sort of human aspect, and it doesn't really come from a personal place sometimes.
Yeah.
But that was what was so special with you guys. So that's when, my fellow organizers, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, Dr. Angela Poff, and I were like, we have to have these guys back another year, because you guys were at the conference, our conference last year. So we're excited to have you guys back, because I think you really bring a very important vibe to the space and message for people.
Yeah, we're really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, we met 2 years ago, and it was a really cool experience because we hadn't seen faces of the keto community, and at that time it still wasn't big, right?
Right.
And it was like
shooting in the dark. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it seems good.
Yeah, it wasn't cool yet.
Right.
It wasn't cool yet. So it's been really cool to see the process of keto just grow from there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with your work, all Dr. Don and Angela Poff and just people in the space, especially like the influencers, and just bringing out education.
Yeah.
So it's been a really cool process to see.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun, and that's where I think you guys do such a great job, just in terms of education around, the ketogenic diet and helping others sort of, and making it easier for people. That's a huge component to I think this whole movement going mainstream is companies like you who are really doing a great job with products that, make it so that people can actually follow it. They don't have to give up their cookies.
Yeah.
They've got them
Yeah.
and they're ready to go. So we're excited to be collaborating again and sitting here with you guys.
So would you mind sharing kind of a little bit of your journey, how you got into the keto space, and maybe some ways that you make it easy?
Yeah, that's a good question. My background is actually, I have a pretty mixed background. So I originally was in TV news for some time and have always been involved in fitness, owned a fitness company alongside my husband for many years. We coached athletes. I competed professionally in bodybuilding for some time. And we were really entrenched in sort of the fitness world. And at the time, two friends of ours, Ron and Shannon Penna, founders of Quest, they came to us and said, hey, you guys should really look into the ketogenic diet. We're doing some really great work. We just started this place called Keto Pet Sanctuary. And at the time, you know, coming from the bodybuilding world, it was like high fat, low carb, sounds insane. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it honestly wasn't until Keto Pet sort of started, and Keto Pet was actually founded to kind of go back even further because two gentlemen, one of which we've been partnered with for some time now, Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, who's a top researcher, ketogenic researcher in the space, and Dr. Peter Attia, sat down with Ron and a few other people associated with Quest and said, hey, look, you know, here's what we know about fat metabolism, ketone production, and its application in disease and human performance. And sort of at the time, it was like, well, how do we get started with this right away? And, you know, clinical trials are amazing and so important, but they can take years.
Yeah.
So that's where Keto Pet was sort of founded, was, you know, we can maybe start with dogs. We can rescue dogs that are otherwise going to be euthanized, put them on a ketogenic diet, and track their progress, even though it's not a research facility. Look at it in sort of through the same scientific lens where we're, you know, collecting data, ketone, blood glucose levels on all of these dogs. We're formulating each of their meal plans down to what their individual needs are. And we're really able to follow tumor progression or regression through PET CT imaging that was actually on site. So they actually opened this facility where we could validate the diet first in dogs. And at the time, my dog actually had suffered, unfortunately, when she was 6 months old. She's this little like fluffball Pomeranian, a traumatic brain injury from a dog bite.
Oh, wow.
And so about a year after that, she started to develop grand mal seizures. And we had her on anticonvulsants. She was still having breakthrough seizures. Her hair had fallen out. She was just like a different dog. She was sort of dazed. And so it was sort of right around that time that where Keto Pet was sort of born. And we said, well, you know, the ketogenic diet has been used as a metabolic therapy in humans for nearly 100 years with epilepsy. Sort of the one place right now where it is current standard of care. Why don't we try it with our dog? And there's nothing out there. Well, first of all, when we started, and I know when you guys started, there was really nothing out there in sort of how to do this, especially with dogs, right? So we sort of went along with what the protocol was at Keto Pet, and she is now off all of her medications, and she's a different dog, and she's doing phenomenally well. And so it was in seeing that, and at the time I had suffered an injury where I wasn't able to compete, and I said, you know what, I need to just give this a try and jump in. And as soon as I did, it was like there's no looking back. And then human trials, well, pilot studies started with Epigenics Foundation, which was a nonprofit that was sort of that is the overarching organization over Keto Pet, which is now a program underneath Epigenics. And then we got to start with pilot studies. So I kind of shifted over to Epigenics, and we sold our fitness business. And, you know, once you start getting into the cancer space and really working with people at sort of, you know, on a disease level where, you know, if amongst everything else you're able to help somebody improve their quality of life through food, there was nothing really more rewarding at that point. So then, you know, I started heading up all the ketogenic protocols with Epigenics. And really the rest is history. And through our partnerships with Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, Dr. Angela Poff, and really the basis for Keto Pet and Epigenics was on Dr. Dominic D'Agostino's and Dr. Poff's research in the lab. And that was sort of our inspiration. So we have been partners with them for years, and the conference was founded in 2015. And we've really just taken it and run with it, and we're bringing it to LA now. So that's a short story for you, but it's a totally mixed background of how I kind of got into it. But what about you guys? I want to hear. I've heard your story, but for those who might not know of it, how'd you guys get started?
So interesting enough, I heard about the ketogenic diet from Dom D'Agostino.
Shout out to Dr. Dom.
Tim Ferriss's podcast.
Right. Dom and Angela, we've got a lot to thank for there, right?
Yeah, definitely a huge thank you. And he was talking about, you know, about cancer, you know, epilepsy, and also like brain protection, you know, protective properties. And so I was like, this sounds crazy, but I want to try it, you know? And I just come back from my honeymoon. I think I gained like 8 pounds, and then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give this a try.
That's awesome.
And then I think the first 2 weeks I lost 6 pounds. But I knew, not knowing now, what I know now is
Right.
it was water weight.
At first, you're probably like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me was, so before that, I used to nap all the time. Like every day after lunch, immediately it's like someone hit me with a tranquilizer, I had to take a nap.
Oh, wow.
And that, like my parents thought I had an issue. They're like, you should go see a doctor about this. And as soon as I started the ketogenic diet, that all went away. So
Oh,
like,
wow.
it's interesting enough that this has been something that has been my reality for like, 20 something years.
Wow.
And for it to just go away and me to have so much energy, it's like, okay, there's something to this.
Right.
And
That's life-changing right
it's
there.
definitely life-changing. And so that's when I got really interested. I was like, hey, Victor, you need to try this. This is like game changer. And
Yeah. So Chris and I used to work together at coffee shops.
Oh, really?
So this is like before Nui started. We used to like hang out with each other and kind of work on different projects. And we'd always be like trying different experiments. So
I think we're frozen on
are we
Instagram.
frozen? Are we
Yeah.
frozen on Instagram? Okay.
Oh, good shot over there. Hopefully on Facebook you guys can still see us over here.
Okay, so we'll keep the story going on
Yes.
Facebook. So anyway, so I had tried different, I guess, quote unquote diets in the past, right? And I was the typical, I wouldn't call it yo-yo, but I would try something, I would be very aggressive with it, and if I messed up, I would quit, I'd
Right.
binge. When I tried keto, I was like, okay, this is different. One is I felt full. It was like the easiest thing that I'd ever done. I've lost up to like 40 pounds now on keto.
Awesome.
But the cool thing is, the fat loss is what got me hooked, but what kept me was like the mental clarity. So being an entrepreneur, I have 2 young kids at home, I have an awesome wife, work long hours. There is no way that I can do what I do, that we can do what we do without being on this. So now it's like, okay, yes, the fat loss is awesome, but the mental performance is what keeps me on it.
Yep, I think that's exactly the same thing for me. Like I used to literally be constantly eating because as an athlete, I was upwards of, even when I was in competition prep, getting lean,
yeah.
upwards of 3,500 calories a day, getting leaner and leaner, just because my metabolism at that point, over the years, I'd sort of trained my system.
Yeah.
How many meals a day were you doing?
Oh God, I was eating all the time, I feel like. I was like always thinking about
Food.
when I was having my next
Yeah.
meal, because I was
Yeah.
always sort of hungry and
Yeah.
constantly consuming, and carbs were, oh my gosh. I was, to give you sort of a little insight, I was actually sponsored by a bread company at the time. Like
Oh, wow.
I was in it to win it.
So you have now come to the dark side.
right. And I love the owner. That was actually Dave's Killer Bread, and I love Dave personally.
Yeah.
And we actually recently met and talked about keto,
Yeah.
which is really kind
That's
of
so
cool, full
funny.
circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, we, gosh, at that point, it was like food was constantly on my mind, just because it was like, I used it for performance, I used it for training, and then as soon as I switched over, I actually was one of those people that when, you meet somebody that's like, gosh, I forgot to eat today.
Yeah.
Like, who are you? Like, we're not friends. I don't get it, right?
How do you forget?
No, how do you forget? Like, I'm always like
Yeah.
ready for my next meal. Until I tried keto.
Yeah.
And it was like this whole freedom for me, where I not only wasn't thinking about my next meal, but I actually had more mental clarity when I didn't eat. Unlike before, where I had this fitness career, I was on TV news. If I didn't eat before I went live on the air, oh my gosh, you can guarantee there would be
Yeah.
some sort of like blooper reel
Yeah.
floating around on the internet of
Yeah.
me screwing up my words,
Yeah.
because I just couldn't like think without
Right.
that constant, shot in the brain of glucose.
Mhm.
So I 100% agree with where you're at, and I think we're back on Instagram. So
We
thank
are,
you guys
yes,
for
we
bearing with
are.
us.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a pretty cool experience. It's cool to hear your personal story, and,
Yeah.
and the fact that you guys share that is so important for other people who might
Yeah.
have gone through the same things.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I mean, just going off the hunger thing, that was a weird thing for us, because we're working like, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and it's hard not to think about food at that,
Right.
every 30 minutes to an hour.
Right.
And then we started on it, and then when we started Keto Cookie at the time, we were working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and we wouldn't eat until like we were done.
Okay, so to give you an idea, we would scoop cookies, Chris and I, let's say from 7 to to 4.
Yeah.
Right? We'd be scooping and pouching and shipping, and then after that we'd go do work, where we'd sit down on the computer and actually work on the business, go home, at the time just my daughter, and then kiss my daughter goodnight, and then work from like 10 to 12 and do it all over again. And we'd have, what, one meal?
One meal.
At most.
And
That's all you have time for in a schedule like that, right?
And before that, I would think it was crazy. It's like, no way you
Yeah.
can do that without feeling like you got to crash.
Right.
And so that was really like life-changing for us. Like, I don't have to be thinking about food all the time.
Right. And what a
Yeah.
perfect fit. Like you guys are making keto cookies.
It's like
and,
losing
Yeah.
out while we're
yeah, you're
scooping.
like getting shredded and I'm starting a business and it's
Yeah.
great. That's really, really cool. And we're so excited to have you guys over at the Keto Expo. So we have a Keto Expo at Metabolic Health Summit. And tell people who might not know just a little bit more about sort of what sets you guys apart from the rest when it comes to all of the amazing flavors you guys have and what that really means in the keto space.
Yeah, so for us, we came at this as foodies.
Yeah.
So we're like, hey, you know, this diet is great, but we need something sweet. And so we actually, when we started, we looked up recipes on how to make just a regular cookie, you know, sugar. And like, okay, what makes this taste great? And from there we went into, okay, how can we make this low carb, keto friendly? Whether, as opposed to going in from a nutritional side and saying, how can I create something delicious? And so going it from a foodie angle, we're like, okay, we gotta make this taste like a real cookie.
Right.
And so that's kind of been our mission, is like, how do we get people to eat this thing based on taste and texture, and it just so happens to be a low carb, keto friendly product.
And also, how do we make it metabolically great for you?
Right.
So through this process, you wouldn't know how many times people are like, well, just adjust your formula, it'll be cheaper, or you can make it faster. And I think that's
Put the fat down, right?
Exactly.
Things like that, yeah.
But I think that's one of the things, is we don't compromise with that. We want to make sure that it is a cookie, but it's more of like a tool. It's a gateway.
Yeah.
And we won't get that by compromising. So I think that's one of the big things.
Yeah,
that
I mean,
sets us apart.
we went to like, so before this we were hand scooping everything, and then we had to move to like manufacturing because we were like, we couldn't scoop
We had
fast
12 people scooping nonstop, and
my
we
gosh.
still couldn't meet demand.
And we were talking to these manufacturers, and they're like, you can't do it. There's no way you can put this through the machine. And they're like, you should put, you know, sugar, or how about the syrup? And we're like, no, we can't do
But
this.
it's coconut sugar.
Yeah, I know.
Why is that wrong?
I know. Like, there's agave, or you know,
Yeah.
and or honey. Why don't you use honey? And we said, no.
Yep.
Like, we want this thing for ourselves, and we want this to be something that's metabolically great for folks.
That's awesome.
And so it was a hard thing for us, but that's what we really believed in, and I mean, we found a way to make it work. And so
Awesome.
yeah, so that's kind of our thing, is like, how do we create something that's really close to what your grandma would make, while at the same time being something that's really metabolically great for you.
Kick you out of ketosis.
Exactly.
That's like a win-win right there.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And people will get to actually try your cookies firsthand on spot at MHS 2019. And you guys are going to be giving away a ticket here very soon on Instagram, which is also frozen, unfortunately.
Frozen again, same screen.
Yes. Good thing we're not making funny faces over there. Hopefully Facebook, you guys can see us. I know we're going to answer some questions, I think.
Yes,
too, right?
yes.
Okay. You
So
guys
we
wanna
got
pick that up?
some questions here. So
Let's start with the one.
And we could always shut down the Instagram.
Yeah, we can shut down the Instagram, or if we can come and just or
you guys can still
restart
see
it.
us on Facebook, right? Hopefully.
How about we start off with a question for Victoria?
Oh, good question.
So, we have one. Okay, can you? It's a little more scientific. Can you talk to us about the types of ketones that your body produces?
Oh, that's a good question. Whoa. All right, so there's 3 types of ketone bodies. There's acetoacetate, there's acetone, which is primarily on breath, and then there's beta-hydroxybutyrate, which is in blood. And so there's really 3 ways that you can kind of measure these 3 ketone bodies. Blood testing, which is all of our favorites, and you know, it's the most fun, I think. Some people get a little afraid of the needle, but it's really not scary, I promise.
As much as you would think.
It doesn't,
really
no.
doesn't.
And it is it is the most accurate way to monitor levels of ketosis. So typically 0.5 in terms of millimole for ketones is considered ketosis, you're in it. Obviously blood glucose levels are really important too, and so those little kits come with blood glucose testing strips, because if you've got, you're in ketosis but your blood glucose is still fairly high, you should in theory start to see that come down over time, and that means a lot metabolically to kind of see that trend. Definitely. And there's a lot in terms of beta hydroxybutyrate and ketone utilization, like what does blood testing actually mean? While 0.5 millimole is you're in ketosis, how does that differ to somebody who might be, 3.0 millimole on the same sort of ratio of a ketogenic diet? Yeah. And that kind of comes down to ketone utilization and how our bodies are using it. And there's a lot more research that definitely needs to be done with that. Yeah. There's breath testing. It measures acetone. So breath testing can be a fairly accurate way to monitor, and there's a lot of new testing methods that are out there, both for blood and breath testing, that are really interesting, that monitor other factors. And then there's urine testing, acetoacetate. So in terms of urine, the thing with that is that when you're testing that, you're testing a waste product, right? So after being on the diet for a certain amount of time, as you guys know, ketones tend to disappear because your body starts to really utilize them more efficiently and understands, we're using ketones as the primary fuel source here. And so urine testing can be a little inaccurate, because then you may not see them in your urine, and then you hear the person like, I've been on keto forever and it's not working and I'm not in ketosis, when if they just tested their blood for beta hydroxybutyrate, they'd be able to find, oh no, I actually am in ketosis and my body's getting the hang of it. So those are the 3 ketone bodies.
Nice. Wow. Got a nice
little rundown there. So experiment with all of the testing methods. I think that can be a lot of fun. I kind of nerd out on that stuff. I know you guys do too. And it could be a lot of fun just to kind of see your body change. I would almost recommend blood testing before, and getting sort of like a blood panel even before you get started with the diet. That way you're really familiar with sort of what baseline looks like for you. Yeah. And then you can kind of see how metabolically it's affecting your body, which can be a really incredible process, because it's really the only nutritional approach where you can actually validate it through blood testing. Yeah. So pretty cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So some of our fans, we talked about our cookie being kind of like a gateway. So they might be kind of new to the diet, right? So what are some of the benefits that somebody that's new would get from coming to the conference in January?
That is a great question. So if you come to the conference, you really can expect to get both sides of the spectrum. If you want to take a deep dive into the science from some of the top physicians and scientists and people literally in the labs, in the trenches, doing the research, you can get a full rundown on that. And our speakers, even the physician speakers, so we've got everybody from Dr. David Ludwig to Lou Cantley, to Dr. Thomas Seyfried, Dom D'Agostino, obviously, he's helping host the event. So we've got some of the real heavy hitters when it comes to the science and medicine side of the ketogenic diet. So you can take that deep dive, but they explain it in a way that really is digestible, if you will, in a way that people understand. But it really allows for you to kind of get a fundamental understanding of the science, and allows for you to really take that deep dive. But at the same time, we've got some really great influencers in the space, from Drew Manning to Jen Fish of Keto in the City, Suzanne Ryan, Keto Karma. I mean, there's quite a few. Keto Connect will be there. Where they're sharing their story and how they took that scientific information and applied it in the real world. And some of them will actually be hosting some cooking demonstrations, and people will get to try their creations. And so it'll be a real sort of experience for people, where you can get sort of that heavy science. I mean, we even have a scientific poster session, which in the scientific world, it's essentially, whether you're a clinician or academic, or student, you can submit an abstract and basically showcase your work even prior to it being published. So you get a real, as an attendee, you get a first glimpse of some of the research that's underway, and some of the initial sort of preliminary results, which I think that's probably one of the most inspiring things about scientific conferences, is going into this room where there's literally scientists from around the world researching the mechanisms and how the ketogenic diet actually is working, and not just epilepsy,
Yeah.
but cancer, ALS, human performance, ADHD, depression, you name it. So it's a really exciting time, and people can really get sort of a full circle view. They can also enjoy each night nightly keto receptions with appetizers, dry farm wines, even keto friendly cocktails we're putting together with one of our sponsors that we're really excited about. And really take sort of that deep dive, but experience it firsthand. So I think that's really gonna provide people with like just 4 days of, it's a sort of a vacation. You come to Los Angeles.
It's LA. I mean,
Take
come
a
on.
deep dive. Take a deep dive into ketosis with us.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun.
It's pretty cool because you blend the science with like the average person who's just starting keto, and they can relate to either side of it if they want to go into science, or if they want to like just learn how to make keto food, or learn from these influencers of how did they go through and what was it, why was keto so important to them. And so that's really cool that you all are doing that.
Yeah, it's going to be I think really great, especially for those who are just sort of starting to get that, like, I mean, you're sort of going to be face to face with the top experts and top doctors, top scientists in the world, but then also like Nui here, the top and most innovative companies in the space as well, that we've truly like vetted out for our Keto Expo, and we're partnering with companies that are truly trying to make a difference and move this whole thing forward. So you get to like sort of, whether it's food products, human optimization products, maybe technologies in the space, you really get that sort of like full circle experience there, which is, I think, is important when you dive into the ketogenic diet and this world, because you really have to provide yourself with a level of education first. Like you kind of have, you have to be your own health advocate through this.
Agreed.
Right?
Exactly.
And so it gives you that experience all in one shot.
Well, I think what's really cool, so I'm excited that keto's grown, right? I mean, friends that weeks ago had no idea are telling me, hey, have you heard of the keto diet? Like, I think that's awesome.
Like 5 years ago.
But I think with that is the questions that I'm hearing from friends and family, some of it is misinformation. Can you guys, actually, both of you guys share what are some of the biggest myths or misinformation that's out there about this diet?
I'll let you kick it off.
I
gotta hear you say that.
One of the biggest myths is you can't build muscle.
Good point. Yeah.
Right?
But you need protein. How are you going to build muscle?
So, the traditional ketogenic diet is what, 75% fat, 20% protein, and then 5% carbohydrates. And I used to train for competitive basketball, and I used to carb load. I'm like, oh, I need this. I need a lot of protein and to build muscle. And then I went on keto, and it was like I didn't have to work out as hard to build the muscle, which was kind of weird.
That's awesome.
I thought I was gonna just lose 30 pounds of muscle right away, but it's something like it was just so much easier. And what we learned from like different people, that there's a muscle sparing effect, right?
Yes, ketones are very muscle sparing, which is exciting also in the research with cancer, because they're looking at it as maybe even a potential way to mitigate things like cachexia that you might experience if you're suffering from the disease that ultimately can, in some cases, be more life-threatening than even the cancer itself. So that's a really great point. I mean, from your performance perspective all the way to disease, ketones being protein sparing is really kind of cool.
And cachexia, if you could please let everybody know what that is.
Yeah, so just as it's essentially like almost like muscle wasting. So as you see like a cancer patient progress, and once the disease is metastatic at that point, sort of taken over the body, that's where that can kind of set in. And the ketogenic diet is being looked at with muscle wasting specifically because it is so protein sparing. But at the same time, with cancer, what's really exciting is that it's also being looked at as, can this actually help improve the efficacy of some of the standard of care treatments we have right now too? So if you were to start a ketogenic diet as a cancer patient, could this help improve your treatments that you're going through, chemo, radiation, prior to starting those treatments? Maybe implement a ketogenic diet, and could that help maybe even lessen the dose? I mean, that would be a really cool place to get to. Obviously, the science has to continue to lead us there, and then will it help prevent things like maybe cachexia down the line? And there's definitely a lot of questions that need to be answered like those, but I would say emerging evidence is really pointing in a very positive direction when it comes to a good majority of cancer types, not maybe all, but it certainly is showing a lot of promise. And if you compare the ketogenic diet to the standard American diet, and if you think about the fact that most cancer types, 85+% of cancer types exhibit sort of an altered energy metabolism where they rely heavily on glucose as fuel. And you think about lowering glucose in the body, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it here, but, could that, in theory, create an environment where cancer can't grow?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the bulk of Dr. Thomas Seyfried's work.
Right.
He's really believes that, we need to be looking at, the metabolic approach to cancer and also metabolic treatments to cancer. And so that's really going to be actually a big part of, in addition to actually, we're going to be showcasing a poster on specifically Keto QnA and the ketogenic diet, but also Dr. Seyfried's work. He's going to go into detail with that. Dr. Angela Poff has done some really great work with cancer, but that was a way longer-winded answer to your question than you wanted.
and it's cool to see that application to a place of healing and also to see it in other ways, right? Can you do it as a sort of self-improvement and like I guess the question of can you build muscle? I look at your husband.
He certainly has a muscle. Right. That's a good point.
And I look at Dom D'Agostino. I'm like, oh man.
Every time you have doubts, you're like,
right. I mean, people ask me that. I'm like, just ask Josh. He's not lost any muscle, or Dom. I mean, it's really sort of just a shift in mental perspective. And I know after my bodybuilding career, actually prior to my bodybuilding career, I was running long distance, and much like how you were with basketball, carb loading. I mean, I sort of had that same mentality, and goo packs and all this sugary, carby stuff throughout my runs just to help improve my performance. But now, scientists like Dr. Jeff Volek, have done for many years, and Stephen Finney have done some really great work in showing, just from a performance perspective, primarily with endurance athletes as well, that this may be a more beneficial approach when it comes to, especially when you're going long distance and things like that, and you're an endurance-based athlete. So it's an exciting time.
It is an exciting time. It's like turning all the information we thought we knew upside down. And it's very cool.
It is cool. I think one of the most exciting things for me, because I think it really affects a lot of people and it's not talked about a lot, is mental health.
Yes.
And there's a lot of work that's being done specifically with low carb ketogenic nutrition and how that might help people who are suffering from depression, anxiety, ADHD, things along those lines. We actually have a psychiatrist who was the first psychiatrist at Harvard Health to use the ketogenic diet or use nutritional approaches as alternatives to medication when treating things like depression and anxiety, which is that's really exciting to me, because
I can attest to that.
If we can change the game and help improve, so much of our focus, I feel like, as a society is on physical. How we are physically, our body, things like that. But half of the battle, even maybe more, 70% of it plus, is our mental state, right? So that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's probably one of the things that kept me on keto. It's that I've suffered from a lot of anxiety, and it's like I feel this sense of, I call it zen. But it really, you notice a big difference with it.
Keto zen.
Keto zen.
Keto zen.
Hashtag keto zen.
Yes,
So
I agree.
myths. So
oh great, yes, sorry.
No, it's great. I love it. This is great. Tangents are awesome.
Gosh, myths. So I think a lot of people, when they think keto, they're like, oh yeah, that high protein diet. And they sort of group it. It's not necessarily that it's like a myth per se, but it's a misconception. Like people are associating the diet with Atkins, and that, it's high protein, low carb, sounds horrible. When, if they looked a little bit further, it's, actually, protein is adequate or moderate, and it's actually not, in fact, like, through the roof. I do think that there is one thing I will say that some people, I think when they first start, they feel like they've got to be like hardcore keto all the time at a certain level of ketosis and are very hard on themselves in the process. But I think unless you're using it as maybe a therapy for disease, I do think there may be some benefit from time to time, maybe not every weekend, but from cycling through with periods of higher protein, you know, or of different food sources, incorporating maybe, you know, lower glycemic fruits and things like that you might not initially when you start out think that you can have.
Yeah.
You know, but not be as restrictive, because I think there's so many aspects to metabolic health, right? I mean, it's, you know, gut microbiome is so important, and really thinking and approaching ketosis and the ketogenic diet is sort of like a whole, sort of a whole approach is important.
Yeah.
So
Why is it important to not go overboard on the protein?
That's a good question. So initially, like what I typically suggest as I've worked with patients is, especially with patients, they're sort of a bit of a different ball game. But for somebody who's starting and maybe just doing the diet to feel better, to, you know, lose weight or whatever the case may be, giving yourself about 7 to 8 weeks at least in ketosis, following a ketogenic approach, just to sort of allow yourself to kind of adapt to the diet. That's sort of important, because, you know, as you guys know, that allows for you to become keto adapted, where your body gets, oh, we're shifting metabolic state and we're using ketones as our primary fuel source. You still have glucose floating around, but we're using ketones as the primary source. So if you know, overeat protein during that time, and you've not been on the ketogenic diet for an extended amount of time, that can kick you out of ketosis through a process called gluconeogenesis. So it's really interesting. So you want to kind of keep it fairly moderate. That's where blood testing can come in really handy, because it can kind of give you insight to, okay, where are your thresholds at for each macronutrient? And maybe you can allow for your blood testing to lead the way versus being sort of particular about weighing your food out and all those things. And that may give you some great insight as to, okay, well, I can't really eat a 10-ounce steak in one sitting, you know, and expect to stay in ketosis. But over time, I will say it becomes easier to have higher protein days and stay in. If, you know, I'll even have, you know, maybe have like a birthday party or something like that, and I've even had, and, you know, I'm admitting to this on live broadcast, I've even had like a piece of regular cake.
Whoa. Hold on there.
Hold on. I have to leave the building, I'm sure, but I've had a piece of, and literally the next day I'm still in ketosis. So, you know, your threshold and your ability and sort of metabolic flexibility, if you will, to, you know, kind of go in and out of ketosis and use different types of fuel sources efficiently goes up the longer that you're on the ketogenic diet.
So we're talking about too high, too low protein. What's the list of like your favorite resources? So again, somebody that's kind of new is trying to figure this out. How can somebody find out their macros? Where do you point people to when they ask you questions?
Yeah, that is a great question. There are a ton of great resources that are popping up everywhere, which is really
Dom has a great site too. Right?
Oh yes, Dom has a great site. So ketonutrition.org is a great place where you can go for recipes, all kinds of great blogs and content. Definitely highly recommend that. They're going to be coming out with more great stuff here soon. I would also recommend ketogenic.com. They just came out with a new calculator that's hitting the scene. So if you want to calculate your macros there, that's an exciting place to go. KetoPet, Sanctuary.com also has a calculator for dogs in case you want to formulate a ketogenic diet for your dog at home while you go on the ketogenic diet. But then the Charlie Foundation, I think, is sort of a solid foundation of resource where you can find videos, interviews, articles about the history of the ketogenic diet, and a variety of other really great aspects to like learning sort of the one-on-one, because there's more to just like sort of a lifestyle approach to the ketogenic diet. There's actually multiple types of ketogenic diets, from classic keto, or the classic ketogenic diet, which is essentially like 90+% of calories coming from fat that you might traditionally see with an epilepsy patient, to an MCT based diet, to, you know, there's all different types. So it's a really interesting site, charliefoundation.org. To go check that out. And then for children too, Max Love Project. Max Love Project has a great website. I think it's maxloveproject.org, where you can go and actually download a PDF that provides families with, it's called Fierce Foods, but it provides the family sort of with transition into more of a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle. And Max Love is really an organization that focuses on education around childhood cancer and really providing the resources as well as the content to allow for children to thrive and families to thrive as a whole person. So beyond just like, you know, the treatment that they're getting, maybe they have suffered a cancer diagnosis, they also get sort of this whole person approach to stress management, food, and all these other factors. So those are some of my favorites, but I'm sure I'm forgetting some. MetabolicHealthSummit.com, actually, we don't have any resources there, but we do have on our Facebook page and Instagram, we post interviews with top experts. We post did you knows, like about, you know, the ketogenic diet, ketosis, how it works. So that's something that we're really passionate about too, is like we have this 4-day event that's amazing, but let's provide an educational platform beyond just 4 days. I mean, that's how you move things forward.
I think it's great that a lot of these resources you're pointing to, a lot of the people there are going to be at the conference.
That's really exciting. That's probably one of the most, when I first got involved in the conference and actually went for the first year, it's so inspiring to be in like under one roof with all the top minds that you maybe follow through, whether it's podcasts or, you know, clinicaltrials.gov or whatever. It's really cool to be under one roof with everybody, and that's really where collaborations and networks and friends are born. That's how we met, was at a conference, right? So we're excited.
That's really cool.
So.
So
I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
What is next for Nui? Because yes, I'm sure you guys have some things up your sleeve. Maybe some are top secret.
Some are a little bit top secret.
I'm sure. What can you guys share? Give people sort of a taste of.
So speaking of taste of, we have a new something coming out.
Ooh.
Next month.
How much can we share?
I'm gonna start asking questions pretty soon.
It's keyword something is coming.
It's not a cookie.
Something is coming.
So exciting.
So something is coming next month, and we're really excited to share it with everybody.
That's awesome.
And we're really excited for it. We can't go deep into the details, but
I'm gonna see if I can find out, and then I'll tell you guys.
But I think, but we are always grateful to the community. So I think one of the things that blew us away is specifically the ketogenic community. You have a mix of doctors and then bloggers and influencers. Everybody was so welcoming. I mean, we were just two guys that were on this diet, and everybody was just so loving and so welcoming. The community's been so supportive. I think that's why we feel a responsibility to the community, but also anybody that is new to the community that wants to come to this conference. It's a very warm and welcoming environment. I think that's what's so powerful about this compared to so many other things going on.
Yeah, that's an awesome thing to say, and I do agree. Like, I think this whole space and really the people in it, whether they're, you know, the scientist or just the person trying to start a business in the space or just somebody who's interested in learning about it for their own health. Everybody sort of goes into it with an open mind, and that's really one of our goals is, you know, the ketogenic diet, it's not at the event, it's not about what's right, what's wrong. It's like, let's have an honest, real, authentic conversation around the actual scientific evidence. And let's showcase some really great success stories in the process and show you how to cook things in the kitchen, or maybe like alternatives like Nui. But it's a really exciting time because it's a very inclusive community, not exclusive. You don't feel like, gosh, I'm not doing it right, or it's this way, not that way. That's one of our biggest goals with the event.
It's a really cool atmosphere. Everyone's just so positive, and everyone's trying to help each other. You know, so that's what I love about these conferences.
I agree.
Well, we'll be there. Are we going to have that something available during that time?
We might.
We better have it. That's so exciting. I'm really excited to have you guys there. And you'll be able to sample their amazing cookies. And in the meantime, people can check you guys out on your new and improved website.
Eatnui.com. And we are committed to always improving. So every batch, we try to find ways to make it better than the last.
Awesome. Love it. And we're going to be doing a good giveaway here soon, right? On Instagram.
Yes,
you guys are going to be kicking that off.
Like right after this is done. Like we're going to post this giveaway. So
make sure you join the giveaway.
Make sure you join,
You'll get one ticket to Metabolic Health Summit, which is $450 value, 4 days, Los Angeles.
LA.
It's going to be so fun. You get to meet these guys, and we're just going to have one big keto party.
Yeah.
That's
Heck
what
yeah.
I like to call it. with some science though,
Yeah,
legitimate
of course,
science in
of
between.
course.
So.
So if they wanted to go and find out more information about the Health Summit, Metabolic Health Summit, where would they go?
Yeah, metabolichealthsummit.com, or you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Metabolic Health Summit, or on Instagram, Metabolic Health Summit as well. Twitter, YouTube, we're all over the place.
And we're gonna tag them on all of these videos that you guys are seeing as well, so you guys can just click through.
Yep.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Cool. We're excited.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you guys so much for having me
Yeah,
here.
Thank you for
absolutely.
I'm excited to take a tour now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Much love. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. We'll see
Take
you guys
care.
soon. Thanks for watching.